Great. Wonderful. Well, dear viewers, thank you for joining us today for a discussion on Peace Corps in its 60-year anniversary. We have some amazing guests with us today. Let's get started. First of all, my name is Nolan Johnson. I'm the U.S. Embassy spokesperson. We are joined today by Anna Hoffman, who is the Peace Corps Kyrgyzstan director. She has worked extensively all over the world and got here to Kyrgyzstan to lead the Peace Corps Kyrgyzstan program in 2019. Would you like to say a few words, Anna?
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Anna. I'm so happy to be here. And I would also say, in addition to what Nolan said, that I started my career as a Peace Corps volunteer. So I'm particularly happy to be working for the Peace Corps now.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Anna. We're also joined by Dr. Ryan Monroe. Dr. Monroe has extensive experience as an educator, having had a Washington, D.C. school as a principal for more than a decade. Is that correct, Ryan?
That's right. I was at Carlos Rosario School for 11 years, and that's a special school for adult immigrants in Washington, D.C. So we had a huge English as a second language program with about 70 full-time English teachers there. And I also started my career as a Peace Corps volunteer in the 80s in Honduras.
Wow, so that's wonderful, and I'm so glad that we have you heading up our training department and working so closely with our Kyrgyz trainers to help those Peace Corps volunteers do such a good job when they get into the classroom and when they get a chance to teach. So we're also honored to have the presence of two of our wonderful trainers with us today. So first, I will start with Maria Musaeva, who's been working with the Peace Corps since 2008. And before that, had a long career as an English teacher here in Kyrgyzstan. Maria, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. So I started my career as a counterpart for volunteers. And then I joined Peace Corps in 2008. Now I'm 12 years with Peace Corps. I'm regional manager. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Maria. And last but not least, we have Saltanat, and I'm going to say it, Saparpekova. Yes, Saltanat Saparpekova. So Saltanat is a more recent arrival, but we're really happy to have you working with us. And the best part is that you actually studied with a former Peace Corps volunteer.
Yes, thank you, Nolan. Hi, everyone. My name is Saltanat. I'm a regional manager at Peace Corps. And as Nolan mentioned, I was a student of Peace Corps volunteer. And now, 20-something years later, I'm also working for Peace Corps and helping other volunteers to have a wonderful experience and service in Kyrgyzstan. Thanks for inviting.
Saltanat, that's perfect. It sounds like a movie, it sounds like a Hollywood movie. So that's perfect. So thank you so much for joining us today, all of you. It's really an honor to have people here today to talk about the Peace Corps and what it does to bring the United States and to bring Kyrgyzstan together through these volunteers, working in classrooms alongside Kyrgyz teachers, working hard to, teach Kyrgyz students English, the international language of science and business. And so, this is just really an honor to have you on and to talk about the 60-year anniversary. And it is amazing, even looking back, that since Peace Corps was founded in 1993 here in Kyrgyzstan, more than 600 volunteers have served in country, building those bridges between our two different countries. So it's really something that we can look back, not just the Peace Corps as a whole over its 60 years, but almost since the very dawn of Kyrgyz independence, Peace Corps has been here. Peace Corps has been working together with Kyrgyzstan. So in light of that, I think we're going to share a great video highlighting some recent volunteers that Peace Corps put together to look at their experience, with host families, look at their experience with training in the classroom, and just enjoying the culture and enjoying their lives here in Kyrgyzstan as they learn more about the Kyrgyz people and their culture. That was a really nice introduction into the Kyrgyz Corps program, and how people arrive having never been here before, not knowing any of the language, not being necessarily experienced teachers, learning about the culture from their host family, practicing language with them, and then finally getting into the classroom, the exciting part where you're in front of all these wonderful students. So that's a great little intro to it. So now that we've seen that, I want to just throw open the kind of discussion time, and I'd love to hear maybe we can start with you, Anna. Why is it that the United States started the Peace Corps? What is the reason for the Peace Corps, and why does it exist?
Yeah, thanks, Nolan. It's a great question. And, you were saying that Sultanat's story is like a movie. And I think the start of Peace Corps is kind of like a movie. Peace Corps started when the then presidential candidate, he wasn't yet president, but I think many who are listening would have probably heard of John F. Kennedy. He was a presidential candidate and he went to an American university. He arrived very late in the night. It was maybe 2 a.m. in the morning. All of the press people had gone home because they thought he was just coming to sleep, but the students stayed awake, and the students were wanting to hear a speech from him. And he gave a completely impromptu speech. And in that speech, he said to those students, how many of you would serve your country for the interest of peace? How many of you would go to other countries, share your knowledge and share culture? And so many of those students were so inspired, they made a petition, so many signed and said, yes, I want to do that, that when he became president, he created the Peace Corps. So the Peace Corps was created with the mission of advancing world peace and friendship. I think that is still an important mission for us today. And the goals of Peace Corps, which that video we just showed highlighted, which again haven't changed in our whole 60 years of existing, are not just about, of course, teaching. For us here in Kyrgyzstan, our volunteers teach English. In other countries, they maybe work also on health, agriculture, business, youth development. But that's just part of our mission and goals. The other part is about cultural exchange. And you could see in the video whether they were learning how to eat Kyrgyzstani food, to wear kolpaks, the men, really about learning about Kyrgyzstani culture here, and then also helping people of Kyrgyzstan to learn about American culture. So those things are still true for us today, and were so important to the beginning of Peace Corps as well.
Even though I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer as well, having served as an English teacher in Mozambique, I actually didn't even know that story about John F. Kennedy. So thank you for that. That's fascinating to hear that, such a great program just came kind of spontaneously to him. I guess really shows the genius of him as a politician and a thinker. I'd also like to hear, Sultanat or Maria, from the Kyrgyz side, you're working on the other side of it and helping these volunteers and helping them, we've talked about, this cultural understanding, from your point of view, how do you see the Peace Corps benefiting Kyrgyzstan as well? I can say as a former Peace Corps volunteer, I benefited tremendously from being a Peace Corps volunteer because it helped me to grow as a person. I got to learn new skills. I became much more independent. I really became an adult as a Peace Corps volunteer. What do the students and participants in the program, whether it's teachers or school administrators, what do they derive from the Peace Corps program?
Mm-hmm. I think so. Working volunteers really do great impact on teachers. Usually, mostly where volunteers work, they mostly just focus on capacity building of teachers and increasing the level of students. And I think our local teachers gain a lot. We have lots of examples when teachers go to the exchange tea program and students participating in flex exchange program, also winning the Olympiad games. So they do impact a lot on our host agencies, schools, and universities as well, right, Sultanat, if you had anything to add?
Yes, I agree with Marija. And one of the things that I am proud of that Peace Corps Kyrgyz Republic does is that we place our volunteers in very rural areas, in very small villages, like way back, like around mountains. And for these communities, and especially for students, it's so special to have a volunteer from so far and living and working at this school and sharing their stories. And like from my experience, I can say that we had this English club every week on Wednesdays. And I know at the time we didn't have internet, but I literally lived from Wednesday to Wednesday looking forward to that 1 hour club that I can practice my poor English, but just talking to the volunteer and listening to these stories. And one of the another important thing is that volunteers bring really good clubs and camps to help students to start developing their soft skills, communication skills, building their self-confidence. So some of the skills that are not given maybe in our secondary schools, but with the help of volunteers, students get some new information about that. So that's one of the highlights of Peace Corps volunteer service.
Also, I would like to add that volunteers impacted not only on the professional level, but on our personal as well, like just perception of timing and so this privacy thing. And at the same time, they gain a lot. So whenever in Kyrgyzstan we plan, sometimes it doesn't happen due to unpredicted factors. No, and they know, okay, we need to have kind of backup plan as well. I think they are just also impacted on a personal level, not only us counterparts, but their families as well. We are just some families joking, okay, we try not to be how to use loud voices in front of the volunteer. That kind of things happen. It's really, so we do have a lot of impact.
That's funny. So I mean, and I think a lot of that goes into all of the training that you guys do. And so Dr. Monroe, I know that you are in charge of the training program for the volunteers, correct?
That's right. We have an extensive training program for the volunteers when they get into the country, and then throughout their 2 years of service, we bring them in for additional training. Probably the most important training that we do is teaching the Kyrgyz language. All the volunteers learn Kyrgyz, and they also learn about Kyrgyzstani culture. And so I think that's one of the things that impresses people here is to hear Americans speaking Kyrgyz. We have some excellent Kyrgyz language instructors who have been doing it for many years and are very experienced. And then we also train them to teach English. The volunteers, of course, are proficient English speakers, college educated, but maybe haven't been a teacher before. So we give them basic skills to create the kind of classroom that inspires language learning. And also because of the techniques that the Kyrgyz language teachers use to teach them Kyrgyz, they learn those activities and learn those techniques and transfer them over to teaching English, and then go out to their community, their assigned communities, and use them to teach English to the Kyrgyz kids.
That's great. Do you so when I was a volunteer, they taught us to sing songs. Do you teach them to sing songs in Kyrgyz as well, or no?
Yes, they do. At their graduation, at their swearing-in ceremony, they sing in Kyrgyz for everybody. Their host families come. It's very moving. I can say when I was a volunteer in Honduras, when I was sworn in, we sang the Honduran national anthem to our host families, and we made them cry. They were so moved to see us singing their national anthem. And I think it's the same here when our volunteers here in Kyrgyzstan sing. It's very moving to the local families.
Yeah, I believe it. And I can tell, so, moving on kind of to the next question, the experience that the volunteers have with the local family. I mean, when I was a volunteer, my best friend was the little 5-year-old girl in the family, because her and I had about the same level of Portuguese, and we really could communicate with one another. And I remember, and I remember I told her, because she was always so nice and happy, and I was like, "Oh, you're like the sun," and she looked at me and she was like, "And you're like the moon," and I was like, "Oh, this is the most amazing experience of my life." So it's those things that are just so incredible as a volunteer, and living with that host family is an experience really like no other that you can have. So I'd love to hear kind of your fun anecdote. So I don't know, Anna, maybe you can start us off if you want to share any of the stories of the volunteers and the families.
Sure. So, one of the things that I think is particularly amazing about our program in Kyrgyzstan is that volunteers don't just have host families, they live in the home with the host family in a bedroom, like literally the son or daughter in that family. In some Peace Corps countries, maybe volunteers have separate space. Here they are living, they are in the family, they're eating what the families eat. And I think some of the most amazing stories, as Nolan was saying, what are the relationships that are built. We had a volunteer, unfortunately, many of you may know that our volunteers were evacuated last March. And the places where the volunteers felt most heartbroken was really about their families. And for some volunteers, their parents have met their host parents and continue to talk. And one of the things that I think is most amazing about Peace Corps is that, as you're remembering, Nolan, you remember your 5-year-old sister. I won't guess how long ago you were a Peace Corps volunteer, but those are memories that volunteers will hold forever of the Kyrgyzstani family who made them were really their second home and their second family.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I'm sure the trainers can say what it's like for those volunteers as they get there and they're working. You're living with this family, and oftentimes you don't have a single word in the local language, and so they're just communicating with gestures. How does that even work? I mean, it's crazy, right?
Mm-hmm. I would like to. Okay.
Go ahead, Maria.
Usually, volunteers, living with family, they have lots of, funny cases. Especially, it happens due to cultural differences or language. And I want to share one story with a volunteer. In Kyrgyz, catch. Catch means go away. But in English, it's catch. It's catch. And then she helped a lot with her host family with the household chores. And one day she decided to meet the cows. Usually in the villages at 7 p.m. people try to meet their cows and then milk them. And then she kind of was standing, and the herd of cows were approaching the house, closer to her house. And her host mom cried, "Please catch, catch, catch!" And she would stretch her arms and she tried to catch the cow. Host mom she talked to her even louder, "Please catch, catch!" Showed her with the gestures, and she then ran away. And then later, when they explained to her the meaning of catch, so they laughed. That was really a funny story. Usually, it happens due to the language barrier. Okay.
That's amazing, and I'm sure after that experience, she never forgot that again. But yes. Can you imagine if the neighbors were watching this American girl try to drag a cow to the crowd? Oh, that's incredible. What about you, Saltanat? Do you have any stories that you'd like to share with us about some volunteers and their host families?
Yes, I can share one story. It's not probably as funny, but it's very touching because we had one family in Talas. one of the villages, and this family, they had 4 sons, and they were also always wanted a girl. And then we placed a female volunteer there, and we were really touched by the how strong the relationship they built with each other. And I'm sorry, okay, and. So, and every time this female volunteer would travel to Bishkek, her host mother would always call me and ask me if she's doing okay, why she's going to Bishkek. We're like worried about her, and that we love her so much. So I was really touched by this story, and how like strong the bonds were, how strong bonds they developed.
That's beautiful. The other thing that's so nice is that people, you know, that the families do end up taking care of you like a son or a daughter, and it's really special. And like you said, the bonds do really grow over time, and you know, it's really touching. You know, and so that's the beautiful thing, is that you have that support of your local family when things are hard. And things do eventually get hard as a Peace Corps volunteer. It's not all fun. It's not all, you know, amazing stories chasing cows. Sometimes it can be quite difficult, especially when you get into the school setting. And you know, you're dealing with, you know, the for the first time ever, you're dealing with being the authority figure in a class, and you know, maybe you're you know 22 years old, and it's the first time that you've had a real job, and you know, here it is, and you're doing it in a foreign language in a different country, and it's all just and it's overwhelming. So, you know, Dr. Monroe, I'd like to hear, you know, what are the kind of difficulties that the volunteers face, especially once they get into the working, you know, what are some of the challenges that they face, and how do they overcome those challenges?
So one of the good things that we do here in Kyrgyzstan is that the volunteers are assigned to a counterpart teacher. They co-plan and they co-teach together. And so, you know, the idea is the volunteer will you know, help the teacher to improve their English and teach them some new teaching techniques. But really the local teacher, the counterpart teacher, teaches a lot to the volunteer as well, especially classroom management, how to like bring students together and focus. So those are challenges for young people that haven't worked before as a teacher. But I do feel like they get good training. They know how to lesson plan. There's always challenges with teacher schedules, teachers who are really busy and busy at home with their family as well, with a lot of family obligations. And the volunteer may have 2 or 3 counterparts. So there's a lot of scheduling problems and frustrations with missing meetings and things like that. But I think overall they're successful, and when there's a good relationship, they can actually work very well together and stay lifelong friends. We had one pair of counterpart and volunteer who, you know, the counterpart was very motivated, and the volunteer helped her get into a master's program at American University of Central Asia to get a master's in teaching. And so she ended up getting a scholarship to go there. So that was amazing, and a great result. And volunteers can work on projects. They do student clubs, like Saltanat said. And you know, I think another challenge some volunteers face is like not all students are motivated to learn English, like Saltanat was waiting for the Wednesday club. But I can tell you, you know, living in Bishkek and not being that fluent in Russian or Kyrgyz, like speak to I meet people that speak English, and often people will tell me they got their start with a Peace Corps volunteer in a village school. So like Saltanat's story is not that uncommon, really.
That's great to think that there are tens of thousands of people here in the Kyrgyz Republic who speak English, you know, thanks to the great work between the Peace Corps volunteers and their counterparts. That's fantastic. Anna, I wanted to go back to you because you had mentioned earlier, a little bit about kind of the other projects that Peace Corps volunteers work on. As we mentioned, the Peace Corps volunteers have a very busy schedule with their, all of the time in the classroom, grading papers, coming up with new lessons plans, working creatively with their counterparts to, really improve the quality of English language education in the schools where they're teaching. What other ways do Peace Corps volunteers engage with their community?
Yeah, one of the wonderful things about being a Peace Corps volunteer, and I say this both from my personal experience and also having talked to many volunteers, is that while they do have a primary assignment, so here that's teaching English, they also have a lot of flexibility and freedom to explore different types of projects in their communities and to see what communities are interested in. Here in Kyrgyzstan, Sultanat mentioned many of them do summer camps and throughout both the school year and the summer clubs that aren't just English learning, anything from debate to movie clubs to music clubs to camps that, Sultanat mentioned learning about, helping Kyrgyzstani students learn life skills. That's been a very big focus and I think benefit here in Kyrgyzstan that a lot of our volunteers participate in. We've also had volunteers do everything from support disability programs to women's centers, volunteers who've started resource rooms in their schools. So here we have a ton of projects, and I think volunteers also, you mentioned Nolan, our volunteer who learned kumis, and volunteers who are playing musical instruments or really learning deeply about Kyrgyzstani culture and participating in those ways. We had a volunteer actually at the swearing in, so just starting as a volunteer, and she was able to recite part of the Manas epic, which I think was very well appreciated. So I think volunteers bring their interests and skills to the work, and thinking beyond Kyrgyzstan to other parts of the world, volunteers contribute a number of different skills. Right now, looking at COVID, of course, we don't have volunteers in country currently, but we're thinking a lot about how to support hygiene, how to support communities in their COVID prevention and sort of the after effects of COVID. So I think there's lots of ways beyond just the primary project where volunteers can really contribute to the country where they're serving.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, when I was a volunteer, we were able to work with a charity and the Ministry of Education and the local school district to get a computer room set up in the school. For the first time ever, there were computers in the school. This was in 2004, so it was a while ago, but it was a huge deal. And it was just to be a part of that and to see the excitement on the kids' faces as they grabbed a mouse for the first time, and it was really special. And I think that it's really great to see the volunteers really, as they become part of the community, realizing other ways that they can make a really positive impact in the community itself. So I love that kind of thing, and I love hearing about the different projects that they're doing. I'd like to open it up to you, Maria or Sultanat. Do you have any projects that you remember that were really notable that some volunteers did, or something that they worked with their school administrators or with their counterparts?
Okay. So we would share. So they do a lot of secondary projects, and all of the volunteers do kind of make great impact. But I can share some remarkable events. Like one of our volunteers in Isyk Oblast, he opened the greenhouse, and all that funding of the greenhouse went to the center where they support women who suffer from domestic violence. I think it was really great. Success. Wow. And another success volunteer, many years ago, volunteer from Naren, he created English center. Now I think this English small center became so popular till today. People, teachers from around Naren Oblast, they go and visit there. Now it turned into a huge American center. The beginning was that volunteer who created this. And another volunteer, Chui volunteer, he's not far, here's the village Leninskaya. he lived with a host family, and his host brother was a handicapped child, and he created garage for handicapped kids. They created bike by hand. It was really also a great success.
Oh, wow.
Our volunteers, yes. And also we are so proud of another volunteer from the south, John, who created the only cafe in Aksi Rayon. If you visit that, that was the cafe created by our volunteer and his CP. Maybe Saltanat would share. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I'm glad because people deserve coffee. Everyone, you know, that's at the prava человек. You know, this is human rights we're talking about here. That's great. What about you, Saltanat? Do you have? I mean, obviously, you could speak to. You already spoke to your own experience, but you know, you must have some volunteers that you remember specifically really fondly.
Yes, so one project that came to my mind is how we implemented, it was a conference, mother-daughter conference, that were aimed to build a strong relationship between daughters and mothers. It's just our cultural, in our culture, in Kyrgyz culture, you know, children don't speak out about, you know, everything that's going on in their lives, and you know, and I think parents don't always ask about, you know, what's going on in your life, you know, from the children. So at the teenage age, it's very important for girls to share their feelings and emotions, or like any maybe plans or dreams that they have with the role models or mothers. So this a conference aimed to build a strong relationship between mothers and daughters. And why it was successful is that we asked the participants to conduct similar trainings with other mothers and daughters in the regions and in the villages. And I think it was in 2018, and the initiative is still going on, and one of the counterparts is organizing the similar conference with the help of U.S. Embassy. So I think the continuity and the sustainability of such initiatives is important to, you know, to help our girls and boys to plan for future and to be open about their minds with their parents.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great initiative. I mean, it's you know, and I think it's also, like you were talking about, getting people to actively, you know, talk with their parents and you know, have that open communication. I didn't necessarily have that in high school, and it made things a lot harder for everyone, for my parents and for me. So I think that an initiative like that is just a really great idea, and it's so inspiring to hear that it's continuing onward. I think that's really important. So I guess I'd love to just hear, you know, we've kind of gone through, you know, most of our major questions, but you know, I don't know if you guys want to give. Do you guys have like one favorite volunteer that is like the greatest volunteer ever? Like if you were to like, if you could clone this volunteer and, you know, have everyone follow in her or his footsteps, do you have one? I know that you'll probably say no because you don't want to play favorites, but it's okay. You know, I won't tell. Anyone want to talk about a favorite volunteer?
I can start while others are thinking, because I'm not going to talk about one volunteer, but I will talk about my favorite experience, my favorite type of volunteer. And you know, maybe this speaks to those who are listening, because I have a soft spot for those who really struggle at the beginning. You know, you see them, they don't like the food, they don't have difficulty with the language. They kind of are thinking, what am I doing here? They maybe are really homesick. You know, we see those volunteers, and sometimes we look at them and we think, they're going to leave early. They're not going to make it. It's too difficult for them. You know, we're trying to help them, and sometimes, you know, they're just upset, you know. And when there are, not all, But those volunteers who transform from that experience and they decide, you know, this is where I'm meant to be. Sometimes it's because of a relationship with a host family or a fellow teacher. Sometimes it's because of just an experience they have or something that changes in them that makes them commit and, you know, tackle those challenges and change their perspective about the challenges. And I have seen some volunteers who started and we really weren't so sure that they would make it and really thrive through their service. And those are the people that I know will look back on Peace Corps. Of course, Peace Corps is transformative, I think, for every volunteer. But there are some who I really look at and I think, wow, their life path was changed because of that experience. And they didn't know what they were capable of, and now they know. And that to me is really special. So that's not just one story, but I have seen that happen in different volunteers, and it's my favorite thing to watch.
That's really great. Because yeah, like you said, I mean, it's not, you know, you commit, you go in, everyone commits to the idea of doing their training and then their 2-year service. But sometimes people decide, you know, this isn't for me. And it's, you know, it's not always, and sometimes it's not even things under their control. It could be, you know, maybe they develop a health condition or there's some kind of family emergency or something like that. And so they leave. But, you know, that is inspiring to talk about people who look like they're being pushed to the limit, but somehow they dig deep. They dig deep within and they find that spark to keep them going. And so, yeah, that's really inspiring, Anna. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else like to share anything?
I can share shortly.
Oh, go ahead, Sultana.
Oh, sorry. I wouldn't say type, but what I really like is when our volunteers, they, with their own behavior and lifestyle at their sites, they sometimes break the gender roles, which is so surprising in our culture, you know, like our male volunteers, they're cooking their own meals or like doing their laundry, and our female volunteers, they're doing some like harder sports or something else that is so unusual. But I think it has a really important message to our young students in Kyrgyzstan. With changing times, you know, it's important that you know, there's no specific hard gender roles in our world. So it's okay to do both things simultaneously, and so those are very, I think, very teachable moments.
Yeah, I agree with you. So as a volunteer, I always tried to model that behavior whenever I could, and you know, I'm still modeling it today. I'm the one who cooks, so I don't do the laundry, but I am the one who cooks. So we're chipping away at it little by little. So Dr. Monroe, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to actually expand a little more on the volunteer that I mentioned before that had such a good relationship with his counterpart. And I think that was a volunteer that I admired a lot because he, as Anna mentioned, he was one of those volunteers that struggled at the beginning, kind of struggled with the language the whole time, but didn't let that stop him from doing a good job. And he's somebody that works really hard. Like, he doesn't want downtime, so he was always like organizing sports tournaments, wrestling, soccer, you know, in his free time. Had great relationships with his host families, and we had a Zoom gathering with volunteers that were evacuated. He's one of those that was evacuated and heartbroken because it happened so quickly. And he's from my same state, and so I know exactly the little town in the mountains that he comes from. And, you know, it's just surprising that a volunteer would come from that part of our state. And so, but he was showing us his home office because he was working from home during the pandemic. He has pictures of Kyrgyzstan all on the walls, his host family, his counterpart's family, all of them, and he's just talking about being homesick and how he's going to come back and visit as soon as the pandemic's over. He's applying for a scholarship, you know, to come back to Central Asia. So he's somebody that, you know, it changed his life, and like he's He's very interested now in foreign service. He's very interested in Central Asia. He's very motivated and hardworking and driven. So I know that he'll build a career on this experience that he had here in Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I just love the idea of the home office. Like, he couldn't be here in Kyrgyzstan, so he brought what he could and put it in his environment, so he can always, be reminded of those warm feelings and that, bond that he created with all of his host family, with his counterpart, and that community that he had, and that he kept that community in his heart even after he left. That's special. So, Maria, last but not least, would you like to say anything on this point?
Yes, I agree with Ryan that so we do have lots of cases when volunteers, even without language, they do tremendous success. And as I told earlier, I was the counterpart for 4 volunteers, and I cannot say that this is my favorite volunteer. No, all 4 of them kind of impacted on me so a lot. My first volunteer, she just taught me, oh, Maria J, you're just taking only your pictures. Why not to take the picture of the nature? And the second volunteer, she was very close to music. The other was kind of taught me how to kind of organize clubs, drama club and debate club. I think each of them are so unique to me. I do love all the volunteers. And working with volunteers, we kind of try not to kind of, how to say, underline, oh, this is my favorite. All volunteers, we love all of them. They're doing really just work so hard and make great contribution into the development of the education in our country as well.
Yeah, it is really special. And I think that one thing that always impacted me was, the idea that, you're dispelling myths. So for instance, when the village where I worked in Mozambique, and I was talking to, some local friends of mine, and, and they asked me, well, what did you do to come here? And I was like, well, I applied for Peace Corps and I came on a plane. They're like, wait, are you serious? And I was like, yes. They're like, so you're not here as a punishment? They thought I had hurt somebody or something like that and was being sent by the United States government to go teach overseas as a punishment. It's like, no, I want this. I love this. This is great. I'm here with you in a village and this is wonderful. And so, just those connections to, just correct the record and make it straight that, that the United States and our people are interested and curious about the rest of the world and love to travel and see a part of the world and create those connections. And so I just love the program. And, as you mentioned, it changed my life. And, so it's done so much for me. And I'm so thankful for all of the work that you all do to support Peace Corps here in Kyrgyzstan. So with that, I'd like to, just offer it up if anyone has final thoughts that they'd like to share. Would you like to share any final thoughts with us, Anna?
Sure. Like I said, this is so exciting for us. It's fun to do. I think one of the amazing things about working for Peace Corps is the amazing team and the fact, you heard Maria's story and Sultanat's story and Ryan's story and my story, and that we've all been so impacted by Peace Corps that we also wanted to give back. And one last thing I would say too is that we don't have volunteers in country right now. We actually, in addition to this being our 60-year anniversary, which we're celebrating, we're also commemorating, a much sadder anniversary, which is a year without volunteers. And I think we're anxious for them to return. And I would say that we are planning for them to return. And Peace Corps does see that we will have volunteers in all countries. How we're hoping that it will be sooner rather than later, and we're planning for all of that. But I do think, Nolan, you said just how special an experience it was for you. And I think that continues. And, from the 1960s when we started until today, there are many Americans who do want to join the Peace Corps, who do want to learn about new cultures and share their culture and learn about communities and live with host families. And so we look forward to welcoming volunteers back. And we know actually from calling to communities how excited they are to have volunteers return and to be working with them again. So we are looking forward to that day and planning for it now.
Yes. I am very excited. As spring comes, it's a reason for optimism, and I think we're all hoping that the new spring weather is a sign of better things to come. And I do see that in the chat they have posted information to learn how schools can apply for Peace Corps volunteers. For instance, if you are a teacher or administrator and you're interested in finding out, once we do resume the program and once we do bring the volunteers back, how your school could participate as well, I think that that's a really good option. I mean, obviously, given the fact that, in general, the program does focus on more rural and remote schools, but, definitely feel free to write to info-kg@peacecorps.gov. So let's see if we have any other questions. So most people, Gulzada Kurmanbayeva, she was a counterpart, and she got a lot of experience from teaching English, and some PCVs conducted some English clubs at the Narin American Corner, and she's asking about when the PCVs will come back. And Gulzada, I can tell that this expert team will get them back the first day that they possibly can. I know that they are chomping at the bit to make it happen. So we have Altunay Arstanbekova, and she wishes the Peace Corps a happy anniversary. Thank you, Altunay. We are proud of the RPCVs based in Talas. And she also asked when they also asked when they'll be back, and she's looking forward to having them back in Talas. And the Peace Corps volunteers participated in the World Nomad Games. So what was that like? The Peace Corps volunteers that were participating in the World Nomad Games, what did that look like?
So I can talk about that. The first team of volunteers that participated in World Nomad Games, it was a smaller team. It happened in 2014. But in 2016, as you know, Kyrgyz Republic organized this huge World Nomad Games festival, and 18 volunteers participated as a part of U.S. team, and they mostly competed in strategy games like Mangala, which is similar to Toğuz Korgol. In Kyrgyzstan, we have this game, and they even two female PCVs, they won a bronze medal playing Mangala. So it was a big success for us. And after that, every year, volunteers were interested in participating in it. And so they all wanted to participate, but we had to do some internal competition because we couldn't bring all 60 volunteers. So it was a big challenge for them. And what they all shared that they like about World Nomad Games is that they were able to experience the real culture of nomads, and also were able to meet people from all over Kyrgyzstan and also from different countries and make friends. So, being part of it was a huge part of the service.
That's awesome. Well, I congratulate those women who brought honor to Peace Corps Kyrgyzstan and got that bronze medal. That's fantastic. I love it. I can't wait to come to your guys' office and see the photos. That'll be a lot of fun. So we have a couple more comments here. Agarim Kurmanalieva. Thank you, Agarim. She wishes a happy 60th anniversary. I remember my first Peace Corps Kyrgyz Republic volunteers back in 1999. Miss Sarah Smith and Miss Deutsch. Really thankful, Maria Isirovna, for connecting us with them and inviting them to teach us. So, yeah, it goes through the generations. So it's really a beautiful program. And then last but not least, we have a comment from Ulanbek Murzaev, who just says, congratulations, PCVs. So It's really great to see the wonderful messages and the wonderful anniversary wishes on this really important 60th anniversary of the Peace Corps. So,
can I add, Nolan?
Yes, please.
And I just want to say thank you to those who are sending the messages and those who are listening, because really Peace Corps as a program owes its success to our host families, to our counterparts, to the schools and the communities that host volunteers. And one thing, now that I've worked for Peace Corps in several countries, I have to say that I continue to be just amazed at the warm reception and the true desire to have Peace Corps volunteers work in Kyrgyzstani schools, to be part of the community. And we really couldn't do this work without all of you all. So we also appreciate your thanks, and we also congratulate you as part of the Peace Corps family on the 60th anniversary as well.
Thank you. And we should also mention, of course, all of the support that we get from, our partners in the Kyrgyz government. I assume that you work very closely with the Ministry of Education and, our counterparts in this, the administrators in the schools. I loved my principal when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. He was an amazing gentleman, and it was really, really wonderful to work with him and with other counterparts there as well. So, and we have one more. Happy anniversary, Peace Corps. Hello, Peace Corps staff. Anna, Ryan, Maria Eje, and Saltanat. I hope to see PCVs in the future from Rahat Raikizi. I think I said that right. I hope so.
She's our former colleague.
All right. I love it. Yeah, so I just want to say personally, it's been an honor to have this panel with you all today, to discuss the great work that you're doing, to discuss the beautiful relationships that the Peace Corps in Kyrgyzstan and our Peace Corps volunteers are making, whether it's through teaching in class, or whether it's through running the English Conversation Club, or through setting up wrestling or soccer clubs in their communities. It's just really wonderful. And I want to thank you all personally for all of the support that you do for this program, for all the work that you put into it, for all the effort that you put into it. I know it's a labor of love, and that you guys really have been affected by it. I can really tell that it's an inspiration to each and every one of you. And I just want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing on behalf of the American people, who benefit so much from the Peace Corps and the Peace Corps here in Kyrgyzstan. So with that, I think we can wrap things up. Again, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Dr. Monroe. Thank you, Saltanat. Thank you, Maria, for joining us today. It's really been an honor and a pleasure to speak with you all.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.
It was
Thanks
great.